Mr. Dean Jackson, welcome to the show, my man. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here. It's been a long time coming.
Oh my gosh, you're telling me, man. Community, Dean and I are really good friends, and it's been a very long time out of quarantine. We just started training again at the gym less than a week ago, and I've been digging my "you need to come on my podcast" knife in his back for a couple of weeks, and he finally gave in. Community,
and
so welcome.
It only took pizza and beers to convince me.
Hey, I know a way to a man's heart. Let me tell you, man. So how are you doing today, man? How's everything going? How has your day been?
It's been pretty good. Obviously, we got in a workout this morning. Can't say enough about being able to work out. Just being able to work out again in and of itself is so nice. But the fact that we've got a shiny new toy in Method Power Gym opening up as our first gym to go back to, like, couldn't really ask for more. Especially, I mean, we were in there today, other than the one other person. It was basically our gym, which is like, it's a nice feeling to have. So I'm hoping that whole culture of not a lot of people in there at a time kind of continues on, but we'll see.
Little bit of selfishness in the heart there, the big heart that you have.
I feel like I've earned it. I've been on lockdown for however many months, not being able to work out. So I think we're all owed a little bit of me time in the gym.
Big facts. Community, if you remember, Dr. Gavin Weir was on a couple episodes ago. He's talking about Method Power Gym opening up right next to his other physical therapy side of Method Athletics. It is now open, and that is what Dean is referring to. And let me tell you, it is fun, and it's clean, and it's new. And I feel like I'm a complete weakling because coming out of quarantine, the weights actually feel way heavier than they do at a gym with broken plates. I can tell you that.
I will say, like, that has been like the great equalizer coming out of quarantine is, like I've told you, I've had the ability to get in a few workouts here and there at another buddy's workshop, but 2 workouts a week, 3 workouts a week with very limited, especially a limited accessory work. I think that's really the big thing. Is it's like you can go in and do the big 3 and do 10 sets of the big 3, but if you're not getting that like little work outside of that, like, your endurance with those is like way down. And I've noticed it most in my squats, like going in and being humbled by 225 on squats right now is like, that's a punch to the stomach, and that's going to take some time to get over, but it is what it is. I'm just happy we're able to work out in an actual gym again.
Oh man, you ain't kidding me. Cause I haven't, unlike you, I wasn't even able to lift any weights. I don't own any. And let's just say after the first month, I was, optimistically being like, oh, this won't be that long. You know me. I'm all positive, here we go. And then, of course, the second month came, and next thing you know is like, TRX push-ups and sit-ups get old really quick inside the house. So like you said, thank God that the gym gods are back open, and we can start lifting weights again, man. And it's like, whew, what a difference that makes too. Because I remember the first day we went in and did some deadlifts, man, like, ooh, my eyes opened really wide on that one. I was like,
dude, I am still I deadlifted a couple times at my buddy's workshop, but I honestly, like, the fact that I went in and was able to hit those, like, first of all, let's talk about how I don't even know what I was thinking, even trying to go up to those weights. Like, that was stupid in and of itself. But it was just like, and I knew it was going to happen. Like, I had this plan in my head, like, we're going to take it easy. We are not going to take and do too much day one. But sure enough, we get in there like, hey, let's deadlift every plate in this place. They're all brand new. It's like, well, that's not going to work out. But I mean, I was like, it was a good workout though, man. Like, just the energy, because we had a lot of people in there that morning too, which was really nice.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing too. And we talked about that on the other podcast with Dr. Gavin. It's like, you got to have the people around you, bro. You got to have the training partners and the people pushing you and the people that are kind of on the same agenda. Now, you can have a beautiful brand new gym with all brand new shiny plates with the great music and all that. But you know what? If the community isn't there and people are just there and talking on the phone or talking and like not giving a shit what they're doing, it doesn't matter what you have. Doesn't matter the toys and shiny toys you have. You really gotta have it all A to Z in order to go. And I really do think the sky's the limit now with this gym and the way that we're training, because there's so much availability to what we can do and how we can train, and dude, just pushing each other, man, like, it's going to be totally different for us. I just know it.
I couldn't agree more. And it's, it's funny, like you've got Mark Bell, who's got Super Training Gym out in Sacramento, and he actually has a rule of no headphones in the gym. I've never been out there, but I've always been like, man, what if I just want to go in and get a workout and like zone out? And it's like, I couldn't understand that. Like, not that I don't understand that mentality, but now getting into method, it's like, okay, now this makes sense, because I have not once, I don't even bring my headphones, but I don't even like, I have had zero desire to ever put them in. And I think that more than anything is huge, that the community is it's so much about the community that the desire to like zone out and kind of do your own thing just doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, you're right. I haven't even I had my headphones on me today because I was on a phone call, but like, how can you want to put your head like today? There was actually a gentleman there who had it on. I'm like, dude, if those aren't noise canceling, there's no way you cannot hear what's going on, because that fucking gym, you and I have to like yell at each other from 6 feet away.
Yep.
I mean, and that's the whole thing.
Praise Jesus for that, because like, not only like, because I don't know who listens to this podcast, I'm not going to name any names as far as gyms in the area, but I can't listen to Tonic sing or Matchbox 20 anymore. And like, so it's so nice and refreshing to have good music that's loud, because Karen doesn't need to hear her soap opera. Like, I love that.
I mean, yeah, I think this is actually the very first gym that I've ever been in like that. Yeah. And I just think at this point, we are completely spoiled, because I didn't know it was going to be like this. And this is only the first week. I mean, think about what could happen when like you don't feel like being there type shit, or you're trying to lift heavy type shit. Yeah. Imagine what's going to happen when the people are in there. Like, you're not going to have, your bad days are going to be very good days.
Well, and that's like the cool thing to like think about right now. Is like, I honestly believe there's a lot of people that will plan to work out there that are either A, working out somewhere else right now, or more than likely B, are still waiting because of the whole disease that must not be named thing. Because they're still a little bit worried about, that being transmitted and stuff like that. And I like, for me, YOLO, like, at this point. I'd imagine there's a lot of people out there that are still kind of like, okay, I'm going to wait and see how this goes. But dude, when we get a lot of people in there, like, I can't wait. Like, we've already got that core group of people that we know from the other gym that are there. But what's ironic is we haven't, other than that first day, I haven't seen any of them yet.
Right. And it's all hit or miss too until the weekend's coming. I'm sure we're all going to go at the same time. But I mean, it's just a beautiful thing where we know that anytime you go there, you're going to have space to work out. And I think that's a very big thing. It's a very big deal too, because walking into a gym with a program, or even just not even on a paper program, just this is what I want to do today. This is where I want to take my shots. You and I, especially yourself, this is where I want to film. Most of the time when you walk into a Globo gym, that's not happening, my guy. You got to shoot from the hip as much as you can and kind of box people out and get your machine that you want. I don't think you're ever going to have that problem in this gym. And I think it's like 1 to 2 to 3, A to B to C, you're going to get in, you're going to get it. And then, what's a really cool thing about that too, it just sprung on me, is like, you're going to be so much more efficient in your workout, and your time is going to be cut down so much. Before you know it, you're going to be out of there and you'll be like, holy shit, that was like record time. Well, it's because everyone knows what they're doing and you have enough room.
Yeah. And I think that, especially from like what you're talking about with the filming aspect, like, not only is it like, do I want to film this set knowing that there's going to be a million people walking in front of me, but then you also have the added, like, if I want to set up my camera kind of in an open area, I've got to worry about Joe Schmo that's not paying attention, knocking that over, doing damage to my camera. And then, it being a situation where it's like, I'm really upset about this, but at the end of the day, there's not anything I can really do about it, because I can't ask somebody to pay for that, because it's like, at the end of it, should I have my camera out in the middle of nowhere filming? Right. Probably not. But that's, like you said, that's not going to be something that we're going to have to deal with at Method, which is really nice.
Yeah, man, I love it, man. I love it. So for the community, I know they know that I know you in the community. If you don't know, I know Dean pretty well. Have you been what, a couple years now? We're friends, 3-4 years now, or something like
I
that,
think at least three now. I want to say at
at
least
least.
three. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dean and I know each other pretty well, pretty inside and out. A lot of bourbon drinking together, a lot of cries, a lot of tears, all that good shit that friends do. But hey, Dean, if you could do us a favor and just introduce yourself to the community and kind of like how you came into this journey and kind of into the fitness space, man.
Well, as you said, my name's Dean. I started lifting back in April of 2010. I was about 26, 27 years old at this point. Went through a nasty relationship thing, like that whole breakups made bodybuilders was rang true for me. Um, got a buddy that I was working with at the time. He could see that I was having a tough time with the whole relationship thing. Lost some weight, just was kind of in a bad place. And he's like, look, dude, he's like, I need you to come to the gym with me. We need to get you out of the house. We need to get you doing something. I agreed. And, it was funny because initially I was just kind of following this guy around the gym because I hadn't worked out since sophomore year of high school. And even at that, it was just for gym class and it wasn't anything that I had taken seriously. And so I was kind of like his puppy dog, just following him around the gym and, just following his lead, doing exactly what he did. And the ironic thing is 3 months after he got me into the gym, he moved back home to Iowa. This was when I was living in Tucson. And so like 3 months in, I'm like, there was this moment where it's like, all right, do I keep doing this or do I just give up now that he's gone? And thankfully I kept to it. At that time, like YouTube was kind of on the come up, especially with the fitness side of things. There was a handful of channels out there that were putting out a lot of like, here's how you work out. Here's, a leg day. Here's a chest day. And it was like, that stuff saved me. And that's what honestly kept me going, because if that didn't exist and I had to like try and scour the internet for like some kind of programming that I couldn't visually see, I honestly don't know if I would have stuck with it. And so that was 10 years ago. And it's been a great journey. It's probably the one thing I can't think of another thing that I've committed to for longer in my life than lifting. No sport, no other hobby like this. This is the longest running hobby I've ever had. And I call it a hobby loosely because I think it's obviously a lifestyle at this point.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree with you more, man. I just think once it gets into your blood, man, and you really take off, it's like, you know how it is, man. Like some days you just have a bad day and you put everything down. You're like, I'm just going to go get a lift on, or I'm just going to go do something outside. It's one of those things like, I wish more people understood that, it's not here to hurt you and it shouldn't be like a burden, and I think that's the problem with this space is that it's like everyone looks at it like a burden. It's either or, there's really no gray area with it. It's like, I'm either all in this thing or it's like, fuck, I have to go to the gym. It's like, no, dude, like we get to go to the gym. And I think that's the big turning point.
And I think part of the problem is there's also the perceived meathead culture is kind of a turn off to people. Right. But like, I feel like that's such an outdated, like, viewpoint of the gym. Like there's like, even, the gym we used to go to, like there's the crowd is so diverse. Right. It's not like you've got your meatheads, but then you've got your soccer moms, you got your high school kids, you got your people that are in there for the first time. Like it's not as exclusive of a club as it used to be maybe 20 years ago. And I think that's the problem too, is the people that don't go and haven't gone don't have that information to know that it's not that. I mean, that's why you got Planet Fitness, like still pumping that lunk alarm, like whole, advertisement campaign, because they know that there's people out there that still believe in that mentality. Right. And they're like, okay, we can, we're going to target those people because they're scared of the meatheads, and we're going to give them a meathead free space. And I think that's part of it too. And I think it takes getting into the gym, obviously, and getting that experience to realize that like everybody is there to help everybody else. We all started from somewhere. The meatheads weren't born with a 6-pack benching 315. They were once scrawny or overweight or whatever. So
I think that's a great point and a huge point in this space. It's like, and if anyone's listening to this podcast and you don't like going to the gym and like exercise isn't your thing, but you just love listening to all this nutrition talk and fitness talk and lifestyle mindset talk, like listen to, Dean's been doing it for 10 years. And that was a wonderful, beautiful point that he made. It's like, just go grab a friend, grab a loved one, whoever you have, just go. It doesn't have to be every day. It could be 3 days, 2 days a week for 30 minutes at a time. Go scout the place, scour the place. Nowadays, you can even go for like a week for free at most of these places, or get like a free 5-day pass just to make sure it's okay for you. But like you said, and it's 100% spot fucking on. Dude, when I started, are you kidding me? I was like 16 years old going to a gym. Of course, I haven't been working out since I was 16. It's just when I first went, talk about intimidating, like this little scrawny fucking teenager, no muscle, trying to figure things out. And I think people just really need to get over that, because it's like a melting pot in the gym, man. I'm like, if you don't go to like a CrossFit box or like a powerlifting gym per se, like it's a melting pot, man. And guess what? That any of those people in there don't give a fuck about what you're doing and how you look. Trust me.
And it's funny you say that. So before I actually got back into the gym in 2010, there was a time, I want to say it was around like 2005 or 2006, where I was like, you know what? I need to get healthy again. I'm going to start going to the gym. So I signed up at Gold's. There's a Gold's just down the street from my house. I signed up, and like, obviously being a complete bro, I'm like, well, I'm going to do a chest workout to start, obviously, So I walk into the gym, and like, I'm pretty self-aware. So I'm like, you know what? I'm definitely not as strong as I was in high school when I could bench, because I think I was able to like max out at like 225 in high school. So I'm like, I'm going to start at 135. I put 135 on the bar, dude. I unrack that, and the thing falls to my chest. And I am not kidding you when I literally start flailing. My legs are off the ground, shaking. And I finally get it up, rack it, and look around. You know how many people were looking at me? 0.
The one time you want someone looking at you.
No, gosh. I was like, dude, I got up and I'm like this. I'm like, oh, geez. But that's the thing, man. Like, you mess up like that. Like, even if something so embarrassing as that, like, I couldn't, like, I was like, oh my, I left. I left and came back the next day, but nobody saw me. And like, I think that's the biggest thing is like, everybody, like, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like, everybody's so concerned with themselves and their gym and their own self-image that they don't even have the time to look at you and judge you for what you're doing, because they're so consumed with trying to look better themselves that they don't have the time to like look at you. Oh, look at this new guy over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if like, and it's on the other side of that coin, it's like, if you do feel people doing that, and like, let's just hypothetically say they're looking at you and pointing at you and they're all laughing or talking about you.
Right.
Like, you got to have the mindset like, hey, go fuck off. I'm here because I need to lose weight or gain muscle, one or the other. And you got to be confident, man. One foot in front of the other. We've all been there before. I mean, we still kind of embarrass ourselves to this day, but it's like, if you don't consistently go, you're just never going to get that strength behind you. And once you do, use it to your advantage, man. Like we always say here on the podcast, like once that snowball starts rolling down that hill, man, you got to run with that momentum, because at the end of that, you've no idea what that journey is going to take you. And at the very end, we really don't know what's going to happen. And I think just get the momentum started, and then day by day, week by week, add a little bit in, just like a progressive program. And next thing you know, you can't live without that motherfucker. And I think that's a huge thing.
On the flip side of that, think about what would happen to you. Like, using that analogy, you've got this giant snowball that you've started and it's rolling downhill, and you're like, I'm not feeling too sure about it. And you decide to turn around and try and stop that thing. What happens to you when you turn around and try and stop that snowball? Like,
yeah,
you're getting flattened on the ground. That thing's rolling over you. And then what? Like, now you don't have your snowball anymore, and you still got to get your ass back up and still get down the mountain. It's like, just like, once you start building that momentum, like, just trust that it's going to take you where you need to go. And don't worry about like if it's moving too fast or anything like that. And I think people tend to get ahead of themselves in a lot of ways in that regard. And I think if you just slow your mind down enough to trust the pace and trust the process, you're going to get where you need to go. and you're going to realize halfway down that you're having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, man, you got a dead journey, brother. It's what it's all about. It really is. It's not the
Yeah.
beginning and it's not the end. It's everything in the middle. And that's the one thing that we don't preach enough, is because people set these goals and they look at these things. They look at the end right away and they focus so much on, they look at they're at the base of the mountain. They're like, I'm going to get there. Dude, there's a lot of feet between the base and the top of that tip. And I think it's a great point you made, is you got to understand that this thing called momentum is a very beautiful thing. You shouldn't try to stop it. And I think through everything that you've done, fast forwarding now into your videography, photography business now, I mean, think about that really quick, man. You and I have talked years ago about staying in your fucking lane and never looking to side or behind you, because next thing you know, you're tripped up. And next thing you know, you're in last place. And I think that's a big thing. And I think you've really dug yourself in and stuck to your roots on that. I know it takes a lot. And you and I talk about how much strength it actually takes not to get caught up in this fucked up world of, social media and things, and where I think, quote unquote, I need to be. But I think you've really dug in well, and you've really, I'm proud of you, man. I really am proud of you because you've come so far. I mean, 3 years, dude, think about it. 3 years. You've really only been serious for like 2 full years.
I haven't I've been seriously considering making content, but and that's another story in of itself, because I started with my iPhone, dude. Like, for a year and a half, I was just using my phone, and was my content great? No, but it's about those action steps that prepare you for the next level. And I think that's and that's part of staying in your lane too. It's easy. And I know this is something you talk about a lot, because in the keeping up with the Joneses idea, if you're in your lane and you got blinders on, when you're considering your pace, all it is how tired am I? How much energy do I have? And then you adjust your pace according to how you're feeling. But the second you take those blinders off and you want to look at the person on your left, the person on your right, all of a sudden it's okay, you get this idea in your head that because they're doing the same thing, they're in your lane. And then it becomes a race, because it's okay, well, they're doing the same thing. Me and him bought our cameras at the same time. He's making better content than me. And then you start to rush the process because you feel like you've got to catch up with that other person. And that's where you start getting ahead of yourself with your pace, and you're looking up to the distance at where they're at and focusing on them. All of a sudden you're not even worried about your footwork, and then you're tripped up and you're on the ground. And now you've just lost a bunch of time because you tried to get ahead of yourself because you were too concerned with what the Joneses were doing, and now all of a sudden you've got to rebuild almost, in a sense. And that's where I think putting those blinders on and realizing that as long as you're in your lane, you set the pace with how fast things move. And that's the only that's the story of the tortoise and the hare.
Right.
The tortoise wasn't concerned with how fast the hare was running, because he knew if he tried to, he knew he was self-aware enough to know that he can't even catch up to the hare. But if he tried, he was going to burn out. And that's where I think it requires a lot of patience and a lot of self-confidence to trust that you are working at the pace that makes sense for you. But if you can do that, sky's the limit, because when you're in that groove and you're in that, you can go as far as you want.
Yeah. And I do think that's, excuse me, the beauty of that is, speaking of blinders, it's people, if you ever watched a horse race, there's a reason why they put those black blinders or those colored of the jockey blinders on a horse. It's so that they can feel what's next to them, but they can't physically look and turn their heads to each side of them. And that's a huge thing. That means they're focused on their lane and they can only see what they see. They're so big of blinders, unless someone's in front of them directly, they can never even see it. So that's a lesson in itself. And I also do think if you stay in your lane and you're true to what you've done, and I fell mad into this whole of when I used to do CrossFit, it was I saw everybody else doing things and I wanted to do that. I didn't have the capacity, the capability, the ability, the athleticism to do it. But right. I was so involved in everything else. I was infatuated with the sport at the time. It's one of those things I'm going to do it. I'm going to train like the top guy, the number one fittest athlete in the world. Okay. Number one, bad mistake, because you can't pick up a camera and be the number one photographer in the world the first day. Like these things have to come, but you have to trust it. And if you trust it and you stay true to yourself, you actually are moving faster than if you would just look around. Like those, actually, the slower you go, the faster you go. And I think that's a huge thing going out there.
Yeah. Well, think about it like, so, you know, they've got that 10,000 hour rule that it takes 10,000 hours for you to like master a given craft. A normal 9-to-5 work week, 52 weeks out of the year, is 2,080 hours a year. So that means it takes 5 years of a 9-to-5 to get yourself to a place where you've mastered something. And I can tell you right now, because I don't do it full time yet, I can't film with a camera for 8 hours a day. I'm lucky if I get 2 most days. So now you take that and split it into fifths. If I get too concerned with my pace, knowing that at 2 hours a day right now, it's going to take me 25 years to become a master, like that puts things in a different perspective. Now, obviously, like if you have talent for it, you can maybe learn things quicker and stuff like that. Like, I don't think the 10,000 is a hard and fast rule, but it is a mentality that you don't get there day one. Like there's steps through the process, and you've got to be willing to take each one of those steps.
Yeah. And just staying true to yourself throughout the whole thing. Right.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it could be, you know, it's very easy to get caught up in the comparison game, but that's also the quickest way to just unhappiness. Like if you're comparing yourself to everybody else, like you're never going to appreciate where you're at. And like one of the conversations we've had all the time is that like the journey is all you have, because if you're doing things right, like just look at, you know, a couple of years ago, you and I wanted to start a gym together.
Right.
And when you look at us now, 2 years later, like things are vastly different for both of us. And if we had both stuck rigidly to that goal of just opening a gym, because that's what we wanted at the time, maybe we have a gym right now, but maybe we don't. But I'll tell you what we don't have. You're not doing what you're doing right now, and I'm not doing what I'm doing, because I didn't give myself the space and the flexibility to let my maturity and my goals shift as I changed as a person. And that's why the journey is so important, because if you're doing it right, your goals today are going to be different. They're going to be different a year from now. And when those goals shift, what you're doing is going to shift. So that means you're really not ever actually getting to the finish line. And so if you're so focused on the finish line, and now we know that you're never actually going to reach that finish line, if you're not finding fulfillment in the process, like you're going to be unhappy, because you're so focused, you can't focus on what's important in the moment.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome, man. I can end the podcast right there. That's it, guys. We can go home on that. Mic drop. That's it. I also think that's one of those things, like, I know you and I have talked, we talk about it. Community, we've talked about everything A to Z 100 times over, you know, so you know how that goes.
Yeah.
But it's good to have different perspectives on life, man. And I think that's really it. It's like this thing called life. It really doesn't have a ceiling to it unless you want to put it on. And if you want to put a ceiling on it, that's fine. If you, like you just said, if you want to do the 9-to-5, God fucking bless you, man. We're not talking shit about that.
God knows we need those people. Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
yeah, man.
We can't have, everybody in the world can't be an entrepreneur.
Right.
Because we need somebody that's going to, you know, load the groceries into the freezer at the Jewel. Like, if there's nobody doing that, like, we've got problems. So, like, the 9-to-5 is respectable, and you have to have those people. It's just a matter of whether or not you can be happy doing that.
Right. And I think it's a big thing, too, to trust that journey in the middle, because, you know, we go to school for X amount of time. And then if you go to college, that's a little bit more time. Or if you go to become a doctor, get your master's, that's a little bit more time. But time you understand what's going on, you may be close to 30 years old before you're done with school. Now, some people may say that's okay, and that's great. For me personally, no, that's just wasn't my thing. I never went to college, whatever. But then there's that thing in the middle where, do you want to get a job, do what you want to do, and love what you want to do? Go for it. But there's that thing in the middle where it's like, do I want to spend the next 40 years doing this one thing, 9-to-5, do whatever I have to do on the weekends, birthday parties, whatever, hangouts, whatever, traveling, and then By the time you know it, you're either A, have to come up with, I don't have enough money, so I'm not retiring in 40 years and work a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Or when you do retire, you don't know what the shit you're going to do at that time. And guess what? That time is very small at that point. If you're healthy, it may be a little longer, but most of the time, if you're grind your knuckles to the fucking bone for the last 40 to 50, fucking more than that, 60 years, there's not a whole lot of time left to enjoy and be young and fruitful and do the things you want to do. And I think that time in the middle, once you take a step back and say, this is what's important to me, and it's fucking happiness.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part in the journey. And I think when people understand, and don't get me wrong, you can have a wonderful happiness life working a normal job. That's great.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about that happiness part. And that goes, I may talk about that, because if you're not happy with that regular job, then something needs to change. You got to pivot.
Oh yeah. That's absolutely. So there was a time in my life when I was like, I was struggling to find work in my early 20s. I never was, and it wasn't that I was getting fired from jobs, but getting laid off, things like that. Like holding a job for more than a year or two was a struggle for me. And it was at that time that I said, my top priority right now is to find stability to find professional stability. And so that's when I started really looking for that. And that's where unions came into play. And that's how I got into the steel mill. And I was happy. I was very content with that job when I first got there. But then as time went on and I matured and I kind of took a look at what I really want to do in life, I'm like, you know what? This job isn't, as I step back and look at it, this job is no longer as fulfilling to me as it was a couple years ago. So now I've got to figure out what that next step is. But the problem is, and this is where a lot of people get hung up, is they start to resent where they're at because what they want has now changed and they're not already in that place. And it's like, when you've got to be okay with transitional periods. And for me, that's where I'm at right now. I'm trying to build this videography stuff, and I've had some work here and there. It's pretty light at the moment, so I can't leave my job. But that's okay, because I know that I'm transitioning right now. So it's one of those things, here's the money I make from work, here's the money I make from videography, and over time it's going to go like this, and it's going to go like this. And then there's going to come a point right here probably where videography is just a little bit less than what I was making at work, that I can finally ask myself the question, okay, I can pay my bills now. I'm not going to have a lot of auxiliary income to do trips, to do that kind of, to buy myself new clothes, new shoes. Am I okay with sacrificing those things for another 6 months to a year in order to leave my steel mill job and 100% dedicate to the videography thing? And you've got to get yourself to that point first where you can ask that question and answer it honestly, and then answer it honestly. Because you might say, you might get in this headspace where where you say to yourself, I just want out of this job. And then you jump ship too early. And because you jump ship too early, now you're starting to resent the new job, because you're like, well, I thought I was going to make more money. And, I didn't I told myself that I was okay with giving up those things, but I actually wasn't.
Right.
And that's where self-awareness has to be paramount in those situations, because if you're not if it's not making you the money that you're making in your other job, things are going to have to change, or you're going to be mad. And I think that's where people get hung up, is they get, and that goes back to the pace and staying in your lane and understanding those dynamics, that I think people get hung up in those places very often.
And I love that you said that, because I think the change is inevitable. If you want something if you want change, it's almost inevitable if you're at something for such a long period of time. And over time, if you just want a little bit something more, I think there's a pivotal point where you have to start focusing on change. And I think it's almost always going to happen. And I think when it does, you have to immediately, if anyone's listening to this and you've always had that, quote unquote hobby that you wish you could do full time, there's no reason why you can't. There really isn't a reason why you can't. But you really have to ask yourself the tough fucking questions. Really?
Absolutely.
Do I want to do it? When can I do it? You know, like you just said, like, is it going to be that 6 to 1 month time period where it's like you have to live way underneath your means? But while you're living underneath your means, it gives you the time to dedicate yourself to your craft.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing. Like, if you want something in this life, don't follow the Joneses, like you said earlier. Like, don't keep going out on the weekends and blowing $300 on Friday, you know, over the course of the weekend. That shit adds up quick. That's the fastest way to get into that rabbit hole of what the fuck am I doing? Or I'm not where I'm at in life because I'm not focused. I think that's a big thing too. And I know you've dug deep, and I know you've always talked about leaving the mill. And community, you probably don't know what Dean does. He'll explain that in a second. But you've always tried to put, this is the first time I actually heard you this month say a timeline on when you would like to leave. I know
And
this dumb
that
thing out there.
timeline is to do just what I was talking about.
Okay.
To ask myself the question, am I prepared to leave in this moment? And that's, I'll let you finish, but yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
And timelines have to be like, when you set a timeline for something, that's like, it's a very slippery slope.
Right.
Because when you don't set a timeline, you're here, and now you've got all this space on the other side of your starting point. Whereas when you say, okay, I want to do this in a year, and what you start to do is like, okay, I've set this goal. I have to leave my job in a year. And so, like most people, like, even I'll admit, this is how I tend to operate. When you're right here, you're like, I've got plenty of time. So first couple weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks, you're like, maybe you get something done towards it, but then you're like, I've got plenty of time. Month 2 rolls around, you do a little bit more, but I've got plenty of time. And then you get to this point where you're like 6 months in, you're like, ooh, if I actually want to make this happen in 6 months, I need to really start grinding. And then you start to stress out because you're like, now I've wasted 6 months. Like, man, I wish I had that 6 months back. And so then what happens is now you've got this sense of urgency, and that kind of puts you into this flight or flight mode where you're so like adrenaline's rushing, like, and you're not really thinking logically. So you start to just act and react as opposed to like plan and act. And I think that's where it gets difficult when you set a definitive timeline. So one thing that I've done is, so the goal that I have for leaving the mill was, this is how I had this conversation with myself. Like, I know I want to leave my job to do videography full time. I would like to make that happen as quickly as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend the next, and this is a conversation I had with myself right around the beginning of the year. I'm going to spend the next year putting whatever effort I can towards making that happen. And then in December of 2020, I'll essentially sit down with myself again and say, all right, where are we at? Are we prepared to leave this job? And that's what you have to do, because that still leaves you the flexibility,
right,
to stay in that job without the negative side of, I missed this goal. Because the only goal was setting another timeline for another conversation with yourself about the next step. And that's like, and that kind of goes back to what you were saying of starting at the base and trying to get to the summit. Like, there's going to be pit stops as you're traversing up that mountain. And the pit stops aren't the end. And the pit stops is where you take a break, where you assess where you're at, you assess what you're doing, and then you figure out your best next steps to get to that next marker.
Yeah, I think it's a good point too, because life happens, right? Life fucking happens. And you don't know if
we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, I felt like I was really building momentum in February and March. Like, I was like, dude, who knows? I might be able to make this happen quicker than December.
100%, man.
And then boom, March, everything shut down. Nobody can do anything. And then it's like, well, and that's the other thing too. And I think this is important right now, especially as we get back into the swing of things, because I guarantee there's people out there that are regretting the last 2 months because they had all this time and they didn't do anything with it.
It's okay.
And that's the thing, is it's like, you can't look back and worry about it. If you didn't take advantage of it, that sucks, but that's life. We all have done it. You just gotta have amnesia about the last 2 months, and then just go back to the grind and, figure it out as you go forward.
You have to, man. You can't let that shit dwell on you, because all that's going to do is hurt you tomorrow and hurt your today. And you cannot do that. Just like if you have a bad day, I don't know, let's just say a bad day. You can't go into tomorrow with that same lingering bad day over you like a cloud. You can't do it. Like, you got to keep pushing forward. And like those pit stops on the way up to the summit, like, man, life happens, bro. And if, like you just said, it's okay if you guys sat around for the past 10 weeks. It's fine, because there really wasn't a whole lot of shit you could have done anyway. There's not a whole lot, unless you had a full-size gym, or, you gave yourself a goal that, if you gave yourself a goal and you just blew it off in the first couple of weeks, whatever. Okay. That shit happens as well. But like, it was a very hard time. No one really knew what was going on. No one really wanted to leave the house. It's okay. Quarantine, the definition of quarantine, right? Okay. Right. We couldn't get like walking around the block was like the awesome part of the day. You know what I'm saying? Like, and half that first month, it rained the entire fucking first month in the Midwest. So it was like,
think about if that had started in December.
Shut up, dude. I don't want to talk about it. No.
Just think about that. Like, thankfully, we got it at the tail end of a very mild winter, like to where we could go out and go for a walk. Negative 15 degrees, middle of January, and we're stuck in the house. You're not going anywhere at that time. So like, that's,
or like in November, like, imagine.
Man. Yeah. Like, no, like dude, it would have been really interesting to see that had happened if it had started a month or two earlier.
Dude, 100%. And I think the thing that you were saying about goals is, like, my question to you is, and the way I want to put this is, I had it in my head before I got sidetracked, but things that we do for goals. And I understand what you're saying about, don't definitively say in 12 months, I'm going to X, Y, Z, and tell yourself day in and day out, 12 months, 12 fucking months. I'm going to do it no matter what. I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to do it. I don't think that's the right way to shoot for it. But if you're a little open-minded about things, and you can almost put any goal in what I'm about to say. My goal is X, Y, Z. Let's just say you set it for 90 days. Okay. Here's what you're going to learn. Either life happens and you have to kind of pivot and figure that out in the 90 days, or it didn't happen in 90 days, but at least you're learning fucking something that didn't work in that time. Take a second. Don't get stressed out about it, because you didn't fail. Number one, you did not fail. You're learning. So if you put, I'm going to lose 100 pounds in 6 months. Okay. That's a huge, crazy goal, right? 100 pounds, 6 months. Halfway through, you've lost 10. Okay. It's time to reevaluate. Where did I go wrong? Maybe my goal was too lofty, or maybe my goal was time. And I think that's the one thing too, is I hate when, I think you're 100% right on just giving that hardcore, hard ending goal, because what happens after that? Like, let's just say you don't have a plan B. Like, what do you do after that? So I do think do you feel like it's very productive just to even focus a small goal on something, see how it works out, but have the open-mindedness to understand why it didn't work and learn from it?
I think that's, when it comes to that stuff, I think that's the most important aspect of it, really. Because, like, let's go back to when I was trying to do the contest prep. I could have come up with 100 excuses for why I think that failed. But you want to know why that failed? Because I gave up on it. And that's what people aren't willing. And that's where you've really got to, and this is where I'm saying, like, self-awareness.
Was that like 2 years ago? Tell that story real quick. Like 2 years ago, we worked together or something like, right.
It was at the start of so when Anthony started his nutrition coaching, he needed a couple guinea pigs. So I helped him out with that process to get his certification. And it just so happened that, like, it's funny, and this is a sidetrack, but it's funny how goals change. So at that time, like, bodybuilding was my thing. Like, I wanted to stick to bodybuilding. I wanted to be that, like, fitness personality. And so I felt like the next step is I've got to get into the competition circuit. And so we started, working on a program to work me towards this goal. I had signed up. I dropped $250 on a registration for that thing. But what happened is, so we're going through the process, And first things first, the one thing that you were always on me about that never worked out was how much sleep I got. Because one thing to know about me is I don't like, I'm a night owl. I have, quarantine is the last, like, this is what's allowed me to get 8 hours of sleep. I have never gotten 8 hours of sleep for the last 6 years of my life, other than days off. So 4 hours of sleep was like my average. And like, I would get texts from Anthony every day. How many hours did you sleep last night? And full transparency, I'm going to be honest, I lied to you half the time. Because half the time it was like, well, it was like 4 hours and 15 minutes, but we're going to round up to 5 hours.
I had Dean tracking all this stuff, but it's funny you say that because, dude, when you took your progress pictures like every 2 weeks, man, dude, you're so fucking tired in your progress pics.
God.
Well,
I'm taking them at 4 a.m. after like 3 hours of sleep. It's like, but so here's the thing. And this is what I'm talking about. You constantly throughout that process, dude, I need you to get at least 6 hours of sleep. I need you to get 6 hours of sleep. I need you to get 6 hours of sleep minimum. And there was times when I did, but ultimately what was happening is I was just subconsciously saying to myself, it's 10 o'clock. I don't feel like going to bed. I know that right now I have to get in bed this second and fall asleep within the next 60 seconds to get 6 hours of sleep. I know that's not going to happen. So it is what it is. And that's where I'm saying like self-awareness is so important, because at the end of the day, I did not do the things that I needed to do to ensure that I was going to be successful in that contest prep. And that's where like, and this is where goal setting and being flexible with stuff like that is so important. Because I'll be honest, like on the tail end of that, when like after you called me and you're like, hey dude, like it's just not happening. We got to pull the plug on this. Initially I was like, cool. And I was relieved because it's like, cool, I got 2 vacations coming up. I'm getting drunk. I'm eating whatever I want. And I went on those vacations. I had fun, but on the backside of that, it's like, I really, I kind of messed this up. I had an opportunity and I didn't take it. But it's when we start to project those internal things that were the causes onto other situations and external things, that's when we start to get better. We start to believe the world is against us. And that's just simply not true. I quit on the process. And you know what? That's fine. Because what happened during that phase of us doing that, that's when I really started to fall in love with photography and videography and like creating content. And that started to become, because a lot of what was happening is I was coming home to like from the gym to edit videos. And it's like, I do that. And, you know, it took me a while. So it's like, I'm not getting a post up till like 8:30, 9 o'clock. Then I got to eat dinner. And it's like, well, I want to chill for a little bit before I go to bed. So it's like, and this is where I think it's important. Be aware of shifts in your priorities, because chances are that's determining your success or failure with your current goals. Because that's essentially what it was for me. Like I just started to get to a place where creating content was more important to me than being a bodybuilder. And my actions fell in line with that. I was spending more time creating content than, you know, meal prepping, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, doing all those things. And that's fine as long as I recognize that that's what's happening and as long as I'm okay with that. But the problem is there would be a lot of people that would get into that same situation as me and they'd be like, oh, I can't believe I'm such a failure. You know, I was going to do this contest and then I didn't. And, you know, yada, 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 you know, this, I always do this. And they fall into that trap and that mindset. And that's where things get bad. And that's where and that's going back to like the whole like goal setting and like being flexible with, you know, how you set them is just as important as how you plan to get there. Because if you're allowing, like I'm doing, like it would be easy for me to, in December of this year, and let's say I have to answer that question with, look, I gotta stay at the mill for a little bit longer. It would be easy for me to be like, man, like this is how it goes. Like I set these goals and I don't reach them. And, you know, it's just, you know, I'm a failure. I'm a procrastinator. That's why I didn't get as long as I needed to. And like, once you get into that negative self-talk, like getting out of that is difficult. Ooh, and that's where if you can have that flexibility that the goal isn't as important or I shouldn't say it isn't as important, but there's flexibility within the goal. When you get to that place where you have that conversation, it's now not, did I reach it or did I fail, but am I ready or do I need more time? And I think that's huge.
Yeah, dude, I think, do you feel like you kind of fell into like the all or nothing as well? Like,
Yeah.
fuck it. If I can't get 6 hours, fuck it. I'm just going to watch 3 more episodes of Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did that. I couldn't tell you how many. That's honestly still my biggest struggle to this day. Like I've shared with you many times, like I feel most creative late at night. So it's like, if I haven't, let's say it's like 10:30 and I'm kind of winding down, like, you know what, like kind of bored with this show. I think I probably should just go to bed. But then I start thinking like, oh, I haven't posted on Instagram, or I haven't posted a YouTube video. And then I start thinking of an idea and I actually like the idea. I'll start working on it at 10:30 at night rather than just writing it down and getting to it the next day after work. And then it's like, I can't tell you the amount of times it's like, okay, well, I got started on this. It's 12 o'clock. It's, I'm not going to get much sleep anyway. So I'll work on it for another hour or two. And then I'm tired going to the work the next day, tired and not performing well in the gym the following day. And then what do I do the following day? Oh, well, I didn't get much sleep last night. Tomorrow's my last day at work. So if I stay up late tonight, what does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, like we get it. We continually, we gradually justify more and more as we continue to take those steps towards justification. And that's like the scary part, because once you start to justify one thing, it becomes easier to justify that next thing and that next little notch and that next one. So it's like the whole, frog in the boiling water. You put him in hot water, he's going to jump right out. But if you turn the heat up gradually, he stays in there. And that's what you do to yourself. And that's why I think so many people end up unhappy, is because nobody's making big compromises in their life. Nobody's saying, I am no longer interested in pursuing my passions. What happens is, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm right here right now, but I really want to go on this trip to Tahiti. So instead of putting this $2,000 towards, like for somebody like me who's trying to do like video stuff, like I need a new camera. Let me use this $2,000 to buy a new camera instead. And you go on that trip to Tahiti. That's your first compromise. And then it gets like, the next thing comes up. It's like, well, I really enjoyed that trip to Tahiti. And as much as I want to do this, like I'm having more fun, just do it. And then you make that next compromise. And then it's like, you've now wasted 10 years of going to Tahiti. And then you're like, man, I never fulfilled that goal. And it's like, it's not like, it isn't a one time, like it isn't a one, and it's that all, like you're saying, all or nothing. It's not this, you're sitting down and deciding today, yes or no, am I doing this? It's like, am I going to take the next step towards doing this? And the beauty of being in that mentality is that if you're here and you go to take this step and you miss, you haven't really fallen down. And so it's like, it's easy to just take that step back to the starting line and say, okay, I missed this first, but I didn't miss that much by that much. So let me take another shot at it. Whereas if it is all or nothing and it's like, I'm here, goal is over here. If I can do this in one leap, cool. If not, screw it. And that's you're never going to do it that way.
Yeah, man, we're like I say it all the time, we're the only species in the world that can make up 1,000,000,001 excuses, like we can only think in multi-directional. We're the only ones that can do it, and sometimes we have to pull out those animalistic instincts. Like, listen, a zebra, a gazelle, a fucking lion, they all know what to do when they wake up. And when they go to bed, they recharge. And when they wake up, they have one fucking job, literally, unless the mama's got cubs, you got another job. But they know we got to hunt, they got to eat, and that is it. And they got to sleep. They don't waver. They don't go, you know what, today, I'm just not going to go hunt. I'm not going to do it.
Well, to take that the step further, what does the lion do if he misses the first zebra?
Right.
Does he sulk back to his lions then? Like, well,
throws in the towel. Like,
I missed that goal. I guess I'm not eating. It's like, no.
I like
he
that.
He sets up to pounce on the next one. Like, you can't he's still got to eat. He's got to feed the family. Like it's not like, and that would be like, in the animal world, that would be the all or nothing. It's like, well, if I get a zebra today, cool, we eat. If not, I've got to wait till tomorrow. It's like, no, you just go out, you keep getting back up and going after it.
You gotta keep being hungry, man. That's the big
Yeah.
thing. And I think a big precursor to it is all like you were saying, like, I think a precursor to it is like knowing that when you have a project in mind and you start working at it, I think that's a huge precursor. I'll say 3 times in a row, to knowing exactly what you want to do with your life. Now,
Yes.
that is not the same as, well, you know what? Yeah, I think I'm going to watch more Netflix at 10:30 at night. And like, listen, you can't have a full-time job watching Netflix. Trust me, there'd be a lot of people staying at home if you could.
Oh, right.
But if you're listening to this podcast, listen, if you have that one thing and you can't stop thinking about it and it's not your job and you still classify it, or your mother or your loved one or your brother, sister, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, whoever the fuck it is, calls it a hobby and you know it's more, tell them to fuck off, period. I don't care if it's your mom. It doesn't matter. Tell her to fuck off. If it's your girlfriend, boyfriend, same thing. But if it's something that keeps you up at night and you want to continuously work on it, run with that motherfucker, because that's the thing that makes you happy in life more than anything. That's a telltale sign that you found what you did. And I do believe 100% you found what you fucking did, dude. You did.
Well, and there's also another part to that. It's like, let's say it's something that you even view as a hobby, and you only view it as a hobby because you don't know how to monetize it into something you can do professionally. Go talk to somebody smarter than you that's in business. Ask them, hey, I love doing this. I'm super passionate about this. Is this something I can monetize and do it professionally? And how do I do it? Because there's a ton of there's so many people out there that's how they become an entrepreneur. They took something they enjoyed and they learned how to do it in a way that other people would hire them for that. I mean, there's people out there that there's professional cuddlers and huggers. Like, I don't care what you're doing. If you can monetize hugging, you can monetize anything. And that's where I think, especially what you're saying about the word hobby, like there's almost a negative connotation with that word, in the sense that it's like, it's silly. It's fun. It's not like, there's nothing that can be serious if it's labeled as a hobby.
That word has totally changed today. I mean, because there's so much more on the back end of that now. And back in the day, a hobby was, I came home and I worked on, some kind of arts and crafts, or I worked on my train. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Guess what? You can film yourself working on a train today and make a ton of money. Like, think about those kids that make fucking, the gel. What the fuck is that? There's kids that are making slime. There's kids making 6 figures on YouTube from slime. They're not even fucking 17 yet, and their parents have to hold all their money in an account.
Yeah.
You got the soccer mom at home who's got an iPhone set up, and she does cooking demonstrations on her soup that she makes.
Yep.
Well,
like I told you the other day, there's the guy that does the mouse traps, and he's got millions of followers. Like, it doesn't matter.
I think we need to start looking at these so-called, hobbies as, can I do something with it? And if you're so passionate about it and you love it so much, I think you should take a stab in the dark. I think you should just try. And guess what? Try it for 6 months. Talk to someone and see what you can hammer it. Make a video a day, or a video once a week video. So that's 4 videos a month for 6 months. See what happens.
I would caveat that with one thing, and one thing only. And that is, are you happy with the way your life is in the moment? If you're happy in your 9 to 5 because it provides you enough disposable income to spend on your hobby, and you're cool with that, keep running with that. Keep it as a hobby, because there's so many people I've known throughout my life that are good with computers, good at building computers, but they like doing it as a hobby because it's fun for them and there's not a lot riding on it. But the second it becomes a professional thing, the dynamic changes. And that's where self-aware, I keep saying self-awareness, but that's why it's so important, because it's there could be, I could even end up in that boat where it's for the most part, from the guidelines that people use to classify things as a hobby, the videography thing has been a hobby for me for a while. I was just doing it because it was fun and I enjoyed it. It's only in, the last 6 months that I've actually started to get paid clients. And it may be that as I get closer to it, I'm like, you know what? I got all these people, they're asking for these jobs. I'm doing the jobs. They don't like what I'm doing. And they keep asking for me to like, they want to do it different or this or that. And like all those added dynamics of making it a business, I may end up saying, screw it. I don't want to do that anymore. But that's where you've got to be able to be honest with yourself with those things. And that's, I think that's the biggest part is people get too tied up in thinking this is what they want, but not knowing if it actually is.
I think, dude, that's 100% because it happened, when I was, when I went into my cooking profession, when I was a chef for a long time, I ended up hitting it so hard, loving it so much. And I was doing everything, but you know what comes with that was I had to cook every single time I was at a family gathering. Every single time I was on vacation, I went shopping and cooked for everybody. I grilled. Summertime cookouts, I did it. Menus to do for Easter, holiday stuff, I was on every single holiday. I walk in saying, I'm not cooking nothing. I get roped into the kitchen. Eventually, over time, I fell out of love with my quote unquote hobby because I hammered it too hard. But you know what? Isn't that a telltale sign that that wasn't for me? Because no matter how much you love something, there's going to come that time where it's like, damn it, I have all this stuff rolling. I just need to take a break. That's the difference right there. I need to take a break because you're working too hard or it's too heavy right now. Then fuck this. I don't want to do it anymore.
Well, and
I think you have to understand that. And that's self-awareness as well, right?
And there's something else to that too, is like, we also think that if we love something, it doesn't have to require work. And that I think is even bigger because it's like, you hear this, like, and I made a post about this a while back where it's like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Right.
And it's like, no, because first of all, that completely dismisses my passion for what I'm doing because it's saying that, oh, you're only doing that because you're passionate. No, this requires work. This is hard. This is tough. And that completely negates all of that. But at the same time, like, I don't care what your hobby is. And if it's just a hobby or if you're doing it professionally, you're going to have bad days. And if you go into it with the mentality that thinking because I love this, I'm never going to have a bad day. How do you react when you come to that inevitable first bad day? And I think that's a big wake-up call for a lot of people that don't have that self-awareness. And it's like, I experienced that with the video stuff. I think we talked about this the other day. When I first sat down, so when I was doing stuff on my phone, I was downloading like a couple of different apps that you just like take your video clips and it builds this little montage for you. And like, after doing that for a few weeks, I'm like, I want control of this. I don't like the way this app does it. I want to figure out how to do this myself. And so the Final Cut Pro, which is Apple's version of like editing software, had a 30-day free trial. I downloaded it, put it on my computer, open it up. And I'm like, now what? I couldn't figure out how to upload a video into there. I couldn't figure out how to, once I got it up into the actual program, which took me forever, I couldn't figure out how to do anything with it. And there was this moment that I was like, I kind of threw my hands up. I'm like, I can't figure this out. And then I'm like, whoa, hold on. This is something that you've said that you've wanted to do.
You asked for.
Are we going to allow just a little minor level of frustration in something that we literally have no previous experience in, so we shouldn't know how to do it at this point? Are we going to let that frustration keep us from doing what we want to do? And like, I didn't actually have this conversation with myself, but essentially I did. And I said, no, this is what I want to do. So what are we going to do? And that's when I jumped onto YouTube. Beginner Final Cut Pro tutorial, 2-hour video, watched the whole thing, stopped it at parts, played with the computer, figured out how to do it. And then, obviously there was still frustration that came in. There's still frustration. Like now it's like my computer, I can't edit 4K footage and it takes forever and that frustrates me. So it's like, there's always going to be something.
Yes.
No matter how much you love something, you're going to run into frustrations. And if you let those frustrations lead you to believe that you don't love it anymore, then you need to reevaluate your entire paradigm of how you view love, because love is frustrating. Like any type of thing you invest that amount of time into is going to cause you frustration. And if you think that it's not, I'm sorry, but you're wrong.
Yeah. And I think it's, you're putting that big ass level of want on it too, that big need of like, you love it so fucking much that you just want it all. And when we can't have a little bit of it, especially when it comes to like a hobby. I wish there was a different word than hobby. When it comes to this craft that you're fucking doing,
Yeah.
you know, your space that you really want to be invested in, like it sucks, you know, like, and it could be anything. I mean, look at me in the nutrition world, right? When I first started, I was all nutrition, and now it's branched off into many other things, you know, like look at this right now. But like I want. I had that mentality in the very beginning, like clients, give me the more. And it's like, when I didn't have that, I was like, okay, now you start questioning, right? Like, what am I doing wrong? Is it me? Is it the way I coach?
Yep.
And here's the thing. I got out of my lane, right? Like, it's like, you start looking at other things. Like, why is this happening? Well, this guy's got it. This guy's got it. This girl's got it. Whoever has, this company has it. Then you have to remember, like, I learned from a great and wonderful company. I learned from the fucking best. I learned from my guy, Jason Phillips. I learned from the fucking best. Why am I doubting myself? And I think that's something that, if you do follow along this thing with this space, with this craft that you want to do, understand that more times than not, you're going to fail. And I think we don't get a big enough taste or enough tastes of failure in our life, because of the fact that we're so married to that 9 to 5, or married to the social,
married to our comfort more than anything.
Yeah, 100%. That comfort in that fence zone, like just that bubble, right? Like, we're so here. As soon as we go outside, we want to come back in. But there's a lot of people that just want to say, fuck this bubble, I'm out of here, you know, go do my own thing. But if you want to grow, you have to understand, like, failing is the process. It's part of the journey, and it's a humongous part of the journey. Like we were saying before, right? You can't be focused on the end, because there is no end.
Yeah.
There is a goal, but guess what? When you're getting close to that goal, another one already opened up beyond that, you know?
And another just like offshoot to that is, how hard are you working towards that goal if the progress hasn't led you to start thinking bigger? Like, if you're like, and I want to tread carefully, because I don't want to dismiss that, like, because it's the same thing with the 9 to 5. If getting to making $60,000 or $70,000, making YouTube about something that you enjoy, if that's your goal and you can be happy with that for the rest of your life, work towards that. Once you hit there, you can cruise control. But I would imagine that most people, as they start working towards that, like, and they get into that 50,000, 55,000, like, you know what, like, I'm going to hit that 60K here soon. I kind of want to see if I can make it to 100. And then they start thinking, okay, what's it going to take for me to get to 100? Oh, well, I need to start, I need to add this other dynamic to it, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. And that's where, like, those goal shifts start to happen. It's like, and maybe it doesn't, but I can guarantee you, if you're working hard towards that goal, you're going to at least ask those questions. And that's what I think is important, is if you're not getting to a point where you're not even asking the question of, how do I scale this bigger? I'd argue that you're not working hard enough towards that goal.
Those things will come up if you're working hard enough.
Inevitably.
It's automatic. It's fucking inevitable that those things start coming in your head, because you're learning the process more. Those things that were once hard are now an everyday thing, a skill. It turned into a skill, and you're wanting more. It's like you're a sponge. It's like the Matrix, man. You're downloaded in, and you're just like, kung fu, teach me. You know, like, show me. It's like it's one of those things. And I want to stay on this topic, but I want to pivot a little bit, because I want to bring a lot of impact to the community with what you're actually doing now.
Well, I actually have the perfect segue to that.
Awesome. Yeah.
That was me. Like, initially with the video stuff, my thought process was, I want to make videos on Instagram. I want to make videos on YouTube, and that's what I want to do. And it wasn't until I started getting good at that, and people started coming up to me like, hey, can you make some content for me, that I started to think about scale. It's like, okay, you know, getting monetized on YouTube is hard, but now I've got people approaching me to ask to create content for them. And it's like, okay, I can now make immediate money doing it this way. I don't get as much notoriety because I'm behind the camera instead of front of the camera, but that's where the big question comes in of, like, what is it that you're really chasing? Because if I were to narrow it down to saying only I want to be a professional YouTuber, the process of getting from where I'm at now to there is going to be a long one. Whereas if I, get back to a higher level overview of saying, I want to create professionally, that opens my world up a whole lot more. That opens up the world of creating for other people, which is definitely going to be put me on the fast track to leaving the mill, which is really and truly more important to my internal fulfillment than being a professional YouTuber. I want that creative freedom. And there's different paths to gaining that. And I think you only get there if you have that flexibility to look at it from a bigger picture than just like, this is what I want. It's like, no, that's not what you want. That's what you'll get from getting what you want. But what you really want is that creative freedom.
Dude, yeah, 100%, dude. And you're doing it. And it's one of those things like, just got to keep your nose to that grindstone, man. And just be patient with everything that you're doing and invest in, and that's the big thing too. It's like, how invested with investments in your business are you? Like, do you really want to do it? Do you, do you need to buy that next thing instead of going on that trip like you talked about to Tahiti, or going out for the next month, or not buying elaborate gifts during the holidays, doubling down on what you want to do? I think that all comes back to how bad do you really fucking want it? And just because you go out and buy thousands of dollars worth of stuff for anything that you do or invest, that's not exactly what I'm talking about. But are you willing to cut out certain things in your life to make the one thing you love grow? And I think that's a lesson in a lot of things in life. And I think, what are you willing to really invest in? And I don't think we invest enough in ourselves these days. I really don't. Even in oneself, if we're not, and I'm not just saying go get your nails done, people. That's not what I'm saying. Or go get your hair did. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying really invest in yourself. Like, what are you doing to actually further along, get that next level in life fulfillment? Like, you can stay at the same job. I'm not saying leveling up your job, but you can if you want. If you don't, that's fine. But I'm saying fulfillment yourself. Like, if you're not happy, there's a lot of ways you can level up. And I think we really need to dive into investing in ourselves a little bit more. And I think this is a perfect podcast for that, because you have to invest in yourself, because investing in yourself takes you away from all the other bullshit that may be pulling you away and pulling you away from your goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, just, for me personally, like, and not that I was really going out a lot before, but like, I'd rather stay home and edit a video than go drink. Like, and that's the funny thing about like that, making those investments, is that at one point you're going to come to this place where it's like, I actually prefer this now to what I was doing before. And you just got to allow that time to change your priorities. And I think that's big and that's where you get to that happiness, where even if you're in the 9-to-5, you can be happy with that 9-to-5, because you know what, like, I wanted to do this. My 9-to-5 pays my bills. It leaves me disposable income to go and take those trips that I want to take, or, invest in my kids doing this, or whatever it is. Like, it's as you start to, like you're saying, let go of and sacrifice those other things that aren't fulfilling you, and create margin in your life to invest that time into those other things.
And it's like you always say, it's like what we said it 100 times already. Like, it's inevitable that you're going to have positive growth when you do that thing. You may feel this guilty for a month that all your friends are guilting you into not going out, or our Friday dinners or Sunday dinners we have with whoever, XYZ, fill in the fucking blank. You're going to be weird and guilty for like a month, or you're not, whatever, good for your mindset. But if there's going to come a time where something's going to change. And you're going to be like, you know what? This is weird. Like, this is really weird. I'm working really hard at something that I never thought I was going to work hard at. And I'm feeling like my life is being more fulfilled, because we don't know until we start working on these projects what they're going to do for ourselves, for like, for oneself. We don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, you can bring that back to the beginning of the podcast. We're setting a goal with something. Just fucking try it. You don't know what this is going to do for your soul, man. Like, for real, you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, when we initially were talking about opening the gym, I had taken a break from all social media. I wasn't on Facebook, wasn't on Instagram, wasn't on anything. And so I hadn't posted anything in any form for a while. And you know, like you were like, hey man, if we're going to do this, like you at least got to get back on social media. So when we open up, we can start pumping that out to people. And I was like, all right, cool. I didn't really do anything with it initially, but then once that whole thing fell through, it's like, you know what, I got to do something. So let me start making fitness content. And like, I started doing it. I'm like, hey, this is actually kind of fun. And then that just grew and grew and grew. And I think you're right in that, you know, you've just like, it doesn't matter what it is. And it's like, if I look at that point to where I am today, like it's crazy the change that has happened over those 2 years. And all it took was just, well, it wasn't even, I'm not going to say I didn't want to do it, but it was just kind of more of a flippant, well, I got to do something. So I'm going to try this, you know, and that may be how it starts, but who cares how it starts as long as you keep going at it.
You don't, and that's the thing too, is who cares how it starts? Because 6 months down the road, you barely remember how it fucking started.
Oh yeah.
It's just like a flash in the fucking pan and you're off to the races. And like you just said, 6 months to a year, you already tacked something new onto it. And you're not even doing what you originally started. But
Yeah.
that's the whole part. It's just like, get that brain exercise going, man, and to take the fucking leap. Just take a leap. Whether you have a plan, put a little something together, try it. You know, I know, okay, community, there's 2 people on this podcast right now, me and Dean. We are completely different when it comes to this. I will say, dive into a deep, dark, shallow pool. You have no idea what's underneath it. I'm not even getting my clothes off. I'm diving in the motherfucker. I don't care. Dean's very tactile with what he does. He needs to understand a plan and all that. But that's the creativeness of how we work. And then that goes back to who we are.
Well, and let's deviate just a little bit and talk about that, because this is also important. And I'm going to say it again, and it's all has to do with self-awareness. Like you said, I like to be very tactical with things. I like to be methodical and intentional. And so, you know, whatever it is, it's like, you know, like we'll have conversations. You're like, I think you need to do this. I'm like, yeah, I agree with you, but I need to see how that's going to play out. I need to set up a plan and start working towards it. I say it that way because that's how I operate best. And that's what gets me moving and gets me doing. A lot of people will tell you those same things just as an excuse not to start. And that's the big qualifier. Is it's like, are you saying I like to be intentional and I need a plan because that's just how you operate most effectively? Or are you saying that as an excuse to get whoever's pressuring you off your back? And that's where I think that's the big difference, is that a lot of people are just saying those things and they may just be saying it to themselves, like, oh, well, you know, yeah, like, and you know, you're a Gary Vee fan. I can remember listening to a podcast where it's like, he's talking to this kid and the kid's like, yeah, he's like, you know, I want to start a podcast, but I need this and I need that. And like, you know, D-Rock said this about that. And like, Gary's like, you got a phone? You're talking to me on a phone, right? Yeah. All right. You have all you need to start a podcast. And there's a pause. And then the first word is, but, and that's where the excuses start. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, you got to be aware enough to know, like, are you saying I need to be methodical about this because you actually want to be methodical, or are you trying to make excuses?
Yeah, that's huge too. And you have to be self-aware with something like that. You have to ask yourself the hard questions, but you also have to be respectable and respect those hard questions as well. And I think we don't do that enough, as we don't challenge ourselves enough, you know? And I think that's another huge thing, is a little bit of challenge here and there is a good thing. And I'm not talking some 30-day fucking diet challenge, like get the fuck out of here with that. But, and you're also I'm not going to take pictures for 30 days and throw away my fucking brand new camera. Like, you have to understand that the process and the journey, it's a long time if you want to do something. And I think you have to understand, right when you walk into a gym, pick up a camera, pick up a you know, any type of recording equipment, podcast, a microphone, like, you're not going to come out of the gate the fucking best in the world. And you have to understand that these things take fucking time. And if you truly look in the mirror and tell yourself, listen, I'm going to try this for 6 months. I know it's going to take a very long time. It may not work out, but I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to give it my best, and let life take its weekends here and there, and understand that that's part of the process. What I just said, if someone told me that years ago, I'd be in such a better fucking place than I am now. Because we all fall into the trap, right? The comparison trap, or whatever trap you want to put, X, Y, Z. But that little thing that I just said, like, I'll say it again, it's going to take time. You're going to fail more times than not. and you have to give yourself the leeway of the life coming into play. Once you do that, you are so fucking far ahead of the game. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
And even and going back to like what I was saying about setting goals and tying that to timelines, like, you know, like you're saying, like, okay, I'm going to give myself 6 months. Like, you don't have to give up in 6 months if you're not where you want to be.
Right.
It's just in 6 months, like, you just have to ask the question, like, is this still something I want to pursue? Am I enjoying this enough that I want to give it another 6 months? And if you say yes, cool. Start doing what you need to do to make progress in that next 6 months. But, you know, if I bought my camera and started doing this and, you know, 6 months later, I'm like, you know what, it's not for me. Like I thought I was going to be into this and I'm not. Cool. Sell the camera, move on. But at least, you know, you don't have to look back and say, well, you know, what if I had done this differently? You know, like, if you really believe after 6 months, you know, or however long it is that you're no longer interested in, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's where I think people get caught up too, is they, like, you know, there's this like investment trap of like, oh, well, I put so much money and time and effort into this, I got to keep, you know, it's like the whole, like, you leave the prom with who you came with. Like, no, you don't have to do that. Like, if you start, and that's the same, like, you know, it's the same in your professional career. Like, just because like you went and got your degree to become a lawyer, you know, passed the bar, you're a lawyer, 2 years in, 10 years in, 20 years in, you say to yourself, I'm not happy doing this anymore. Change your profession.
Right.
Like, do you really want to, like, most of us have to work a career for 40 plus years. Like, you're only halfway into the game. Like, do you really want to be miserable for the second half? Like, no.
Oof. Yeah, and you're just going to die with a bunch of bad regret and being an ornery asshole, no matter who you are, to everybody around you. And eventually it's just going to suck your fucking soul out, and you're going to forget about actually who you are. I think that's a big thing. It's a big point. And we are coming up to the top of the hour, and at the very end of every single podcast, you know what's coming is I'm going to toss you on the hot seat, man. I would love for you to give any 3 actionable items, whether that, doesn't matter what it is, fitness, nutrition, mindset, or lifestyle related, what people can do as soon as they turn off this podcast and they stop listening to us talk. What are 3 things that you can give them that they can work on immediately right away?
Oh gosh. I would say the first thing is, don't be too hard on yourself. Your internal dialogue is the biggest thing that's going to determine how you act. So start talking better to yourself, set goals, but be flexible with those goals. I think if you can do those 3 things, it doesn't matter what it is, you're going to be successful, because you're not going to be telling yourself that you're bad at it or you're a failure. You're going to allow yourself the flexibility to move on and allow yourself to mature and change. And I think that's growth, man. Like, you're going to do those things. Right. So if you can do those, I think that's the bet. Yeah. Do that. Turn that off. Stop talking bad about yourself, set a goal. And then if you don't hit it, set another one.
Dude, 100%. That's it. That's the game, right? That's the growth game for sure, especially here on the Everyday Growth Podcast. Dean, where can everybody find you at? What's your website? How can they get a hold of you and kind of listen to the blog that you've been writing, man?
Okay. I have, my website is Boca and Barbells. That is BOKEHAND Barbells. I'm on Instagram at Dinosaurus Flex. I am on YouTube at Dean Jackson. And I'm also on Twitter, and that's Real Dean Jackson on Twitter. So those are the platforms I use most. I'm really plugging away hard at YouTube. I would say if you're really looking for consistent content from me these days, that's where you're going to find it. Instagram too, but I'm focused on YouTube. That's where I'm really plugging most of my time.
What's your email for everybody in case they want to get a hold of you for some business?
Dean Jackson Jr. at Gmail. That's what's linked to my phone. So if you shoot me an email there, if you want any type of video, photo, send me an email. I will get back to you that day for sure.
Awesome, man. Community, I always like to end it with, without you, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. Dean wouldn't be able to do what he does. So we love you so much. This podcast wouldn't be a thing. I wouldn't be able to be a coach without you. Dean wouldn't be able to be a photographer. The love here is probably very mutual, I would say, Dean.
And, absolutely.
We love you guys so much, and really you guys push us to be better, 1% better every single day. And you make this thing that we do actually fun with all your comments and likes. And like Dean said, you know, look Dean up, follow him on YouTube. Fucking amazing content. The videography skills are only growing every fucking day. It's a blessing to know this guy. And if you guys need work done, seriously, go after it. And you guys can learn a thing or two from Dean and everything he does on YouTube. So Dean, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for being on.
Oh yeah. Thanks for having me, dude. I appreciate it.
Dude, 100%. Like always, community, take care. Peace out. Thanks, Dean.
Thanks.